live, and I will, yeah,
Okay.
I'll let John know when we're live on this side.
Okay.
Okay, you can pull our Zoom up. Chair Glidewell, we are live when whenever you'd like to call us to order.
Hey, wonderful. Happy January, Happy New Year, and let's go ahead and start the meeting.
All right.
And do I need to make an official call at this point?
You may roll call if you like. I can do roll call, but you can call the meeting to order at 1:01 p.m.
Okay, meeting has been called to order at 1:01 p.m. And Adrian, I will take you up on your offer if you don't mind.
Sure. Will you let Marcus in, please, on the waiting room? We're letting in Board Member Magdaleno right now, so we will start with Vice Chair Wagner.
I'm present.
Thank you. Board Member Dim.
Present.
Board Member Magdaleno is just connecting. Can you hear me already? We'll do Board Member Magdaleno, present.
And Board Member Magdaleno, I think, just connected to audio.
Okay, there he is.
Present.
Thank you. And Board Member, actually Chair Glidewell.
Present.
I have not heard yet from Board Member Ishwar. I'm not sure that he'll be participating, but we do have a quorum for today's meeting.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, moving along to agenda item number 3 from Planning and Building Services, which is the 3A approval of the draft bid minutes from December 7th, 2022.
If I may, Chair, I need to go back to item 2A for the approval of the resolution for social distancing.
Oh, yes, indeed. My apologies. Please go ahead.
Fine. If we could have a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
I'll take Board Member Dim this time, and second can be Magdaleno.
Seconded.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
abstain? Wonderful. Resolution passes. Now you may move on to item 3.
Great. Thank you. And please continue to assert any thoughts or guidance that you have, Adrian. It's very helpful.
Thank you.
And item 3A, approval of the draft bid minutes from December 7th, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Cindy. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Callie. Dim. We're all official
Thank you.
names.
All those in
Thank you.
favor?
Aye.
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 Any noes or abstain? Motion passes unanimously.
Wonderful. Motion passes. Moving on to agenda item number 4, Mendocino County Lodging Business Improvement District Bid Annual Report, with 4A, discussion and continued preparation of the draft annual report for fiscal year 23-24. And to start our conversation, I might just turn the question over to VMC's Executive Director, Travis Scott. And Travis, are you in a good place to just kind of give us a recap of the document that you sent so that you can explain a little bit to the board?
Excuse me. Yes. So I prepared the initial draft of the report for the year, and that was sent out and attached to the agenda, I believe, or the
Correct.
posting rather, not the agenda. And so I filled it in with all the pertinent information for this last fiscal year, as well as the plans for the upcoming fiscal year. We're still waiting on a couple of graphics to come through, but the report from our end is fairly complete unless there's any editing that needs to be done. and then final formatting, which leads us to two places that I see. And that is first collecting responses from the county of Mendocino based on the recommendations given to them the last fiscal year, and then moving forward to creating the recommendations for both organizations, County of Mendocino and Mendocino County Tourism Commission, for the upcoming fiscal year.
Great, thanks very much, Travis. And if we can pause and take a moment to recognize board member G2 has arrived at 1:06 and is present. Hi, G2.
Oh.
And you are currently muted if you are speaking. Okay, so you're still on mute, G2. I don't know if you wanted to say any words to the board. I can see you talking.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No
sorry.
problem.
Guys. Yeah, there you go. I was talking in. Thank you, guys. Yeah, sorry for delay. Yes.
No worries. We are on item number 4A. We're just beginning our discussion of the draft annual report for this fiscal year for next fiscal year 23-24.
Okay. Perfect.
I also should say that the Google Doc that was distributed is not the actual document that I will be working from, just because I didn't want to have any confusion in edits and things. So that can be the working doc, and then I will move everything over to an actual Word doc so that there isn't any confusion.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Travis. And just so I'm aware too of the protocol, we as a board cannot collaborate on the document in one single location to avoid the Brown Act violation. Does that sound right?
Correct.
Okay, but of course during these meetings we can make edits and recommendations, and as long as they're available to view by the board members and any public who may be present and all that stuff.
Yes.
Okay, great. So hopefully everyone had a chance to review the homework, which was the bylaws, the previous report, and thank you, Cindy, for putting together past year's recommendations to MCTC and the Board of Supervisors, including some action items that resulted from the recommendations. It was a lengthy report full of wonderful content, and I'm sure it took you some time. So thank you so much for your work on that.
Happy to help, no problem.
And after having reviewed the documents, before we move forward with basically getting started on next year's report, were there any items that stood out that you wanted to discuss that jumped out at you? And hearing none, we'll move on with our current task, which is the next year's report. So I might turn it over to the board just to provide recommendations on what you feel like is a good next step for us. Where do you guys want to go from here?
Am I to understand that we can just type, if we have typo or grammatical edits, we can just do those directly on the Google Doc? Okay.
Correct.
So it's really the substantive questions or changes that we would discuss now.
Correct.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Callie. Does anyone have any notes or edits or substantive changes that we can start with for Travis?
Well, I guess I won't be shy, even though I'm new.
Go for it, Callie. Go for it, Callie.
Jump in there.
All right. I mean, I'm mainly focusing on the recommendations. Get there. Oh, these pages are not numbered. This will be fun.
Stand by. Let me see if I can add page numbers.
I have it printed out. I'd have to go.
If you scroll, it shows it for a second.
I printed it. I'm old school.
Oh,
Got out my pen, you know.
Callie, which document are you looking at? Are you looking at the consolidation document from?
I'm looking
Previous-
at the what the Travis sent,
Okay,
which is wrongly labeled 22-23 annual report.
Oh, thanks. Fixing. 24. Changed.
All right. Well, just I guess on the proposed budget for 23-24, I just have a question, just because we saw several numbers or discussed several things at the meeting. That 1,685,000 and change, that is with the current 50% match minus 10% to account for.
That is correct, Callie.
Okay, so we're going that route. Okay. Then in the recommendations, oh, Travis, you're gonna hate me. Number 4,
And Callie,
MCC.
sorry to interrupt. Could you tell me what section you're on, then I can find it on the electronic version and maybe reference folks to that.
In the recommendations,
And then does it look like section VI for 6?
yes.
Okay, and so electronic version that Travis sent, I think it's approximately page 23, where we should all be able to find that. And the top of that page says VI recommendations, parentheses, to MCTC and County of Mendocino, and actions taken previous to 22-23 fiscal year.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay,
John,
you're welcome.
it looks like there are numbers on the digital copy I'm looking at now. So
Oh,
page
fantastic.
I
upper
did.
right hand corner. Thank you, Travis. So is it 24 that we are on?
Yes.
Okay, so 24, 25, page 26, number 4.
Thank you.
And maybe I just need this explained, but we're talking here about, we're recommending to MCTC that they select the most appropriate competitive sets to evaluate as marketing physician. And then in the update is talking about geographical areas to market to. And that's not a competitive set in my mind. A competitive set is who our competitors are. Or am I just not connecting the dots?
Yeah, no, I agree. And Callie, are you posing the question maybe to Travis for an explanation, or just bringing it up for conversation?
I'm just think we should be, if the update information is what we were actually after, then we should change the recommendation. If the recommendation stands, then the update should reflect that.
Great, yeah, and this is a good point. I think the status updates don't, I guess, fully address the original recommendation. And then the last year's report, the most recent report, this recommendation was not carried over, is my understanding. Does that sound right to you, Travis and Marcus?
This was a carryover. Oh no, that was actionable in 21-22.
Did we have a discussion last year when we decided, instead of rewriting them again into the new recommendations, we would leave them existing in the previous year recommendations until completed, and that's where we'd reference them? So instead of re-recommending it, we left it as an item to address from a previous year recommendation, and that way we didn't have it repeating, and we had the new recommendations listed by themselves for the upcoming year. Does that sound familiar to anybody, that we did that way?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
it does.
Does sound familiar.
Yeah, so maybe that's where I ran into some confusion. Thanks for the refresher, Marcus, because when I looked at last year's report again and I saw that, you know, there were no recommendations to the MCTC from this board, I thought, did we just kind of say never mind to all of our previous ones? But no, you're right. It was that we left them in the report and we're waiting for more status updates.
Mhm.
So
I've noted to review that and rewrite the status update.
If that's what we really think we need to recommend. I mean, obviously the status update, you've identified what you think is important. And I don't disagree with that.
Yeah,
Is this recommendation still relevant? Travis?
Yes. Yes. Let's leave it at I've left myself a note to re-review and work on the status update, and I'll bring that back at the next meeting.
yeah, that sounds good.
Thank you
Because
for catching that.
Yeah, and I think Kelly makes a good point, and I've heard, Travis, that you've alluded to our competitive set, so it feels like there's just probably more info that you'll provide. So thank you, and we'll go back to it.
May I continue?
Please.
I only had 2 more, I promise. So the next, so number 8, number 1, the advisory board recommends the supervisors, but we're changing the ordinance to change the definition of lodging operator to include general manager, and or second one is change the large at large to medium or large at large. That second point, in my opinion, goes against the spirit of the 19 points in the current bid ordinance that were brutally fought over. There's several large operators on this board. For those of you that don't know me well yet, my mantra is protect the bid. The bid is sacred. And I fear that large operators would take offense or something, umbrage.
So if I may jump in here and
Please.
just provide a little framework. That recommendation was recommended to the County of Mendocino. No action was taken because, sorry, let me silence that. No action was taken because of the bid situation. And so I believe that we may address this again when we get to the point of working on the new ordinance. So in my mind at this point, and this is just me, and if the rest of the advisory board feels, or if the advisory board feels different, happy to take that direction. To me, this is kind of dead at this moment, this point.
If I may,
Yes, go ahead.
have we had any trouble filling the lodging seats on the MCTC board?
Yes.
Which
But-
seats in particular?
Large, or actually large and small, both.
Okay. All right. So we have we've had this problem consistently, as far as I'm aware, for the last couple of years, of having a pool of candidates to fill the large seat. So I see your point, Kelly, in that the large lodging might get a little irked, but the large lodging operators haven't stepped up and provided their volunteered contribution to this process, and we were trying to figure out a way to make sure those seats don't go empty. And it also came up in discussion whether that is accurate representation within the county. 3 seats to the large, 1 to the medium, and 1 to the small. But that aside, this is an effort to try to keep good representation on the MCTC board, so we don't have any empty seats. And I did want to say, maybe we should discuss too, deciding on one of these to re-recommend instead of the and or, and just choosing one so the board of supervisors can say, yes, let's just adopt that. Do we have to do lawyers and make it happen?
So G2 has,
Yeah.
G2 and then I
Go to
want to
Travis
follow
and
up
then
on-
G2.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Kelly that I know right now it's hard time to fill those large seats, but when the time comes, we will need them badly. So we don't want to offend them, but let's work it out somehow. So we should give them the first chance of the large operator to fill that. If certain date we don't get any application from large, we can move on to the medium, something like some kind of framework that they still have the priority, but same time, the way Marcus said, we can still fill up that seat, but as prioritize, it's like large, if they cannot fill it, then goes to the medium, something like that.
So thank you, G2. And sorry, Chair Glidewell, I don't want to talk out of turn.
No, I was just going to recognize Travis. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think that we can, and I've said this all along, by opening up the general manager definition addition to the ordinance, that would fix the problem, especially with most of, or all of the properties that have sold this last year have become corporate and not private ownership. So that would greatly increase the pool of large lodging individuals that could be available to fill the seats. That being said, do we really want to ask county council to make this change in the ordinance when we're going to rewrite an ordinance? Can we make it through an amount of time, a year and a half, whatever? It would probably take a year to get the ordinance changed through county council, and then we'd be looking at 6 months before a new ordinance was in play. So is that really efficient use of time? Or could we use this section to say, we are continuing this, or continuing to suggest this change in definition in preparation for the change in ordinance?
Marcus?
Go ahead, Marcus.
That sounds like a great plan, Travis. I think that I forget which one of these two options was easier in terms of making it happen. I think it's the first one. To include general manager, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So I think that we should focus on that. I agree with Travis. I think, and getting the feedback from G2 and Callie, that seems like the best direction to go. That we push to recommend just this one thing, that the definition be changed when the whole potential bid change happens.
Thanks, Marcus. G2, you had your hand up too?
Yeah, just a comment. So just want to make sure I understand, right? What Travis says, that this is the recommendation and we don't have to take any action on this right now?
Well, I don't think that we need to ask the county to make the change with such a short time between now and when a potential new bid ordinance would be put into place.
Yeah, so I might be not up for that idea also, like to not do anything and just let it be there. And just my suggestion. I don't know, like you might have some other ideas. Everybody has some different idea, but I said, like, leave them alone. The way you said, we have a lot of other good things we can focus on, then, like open up something that, is not that important right now.
Question?
Go ahead, Marcus.
Travis, to which bid ordinance change are you referring?
Well, I think Callie's going to speak to that, or somebody's going to speak to that coming up real soon. So,
okay. And is this appropriate time for us to get into that conversation, or we want to finish notes on this item and move on with Callie's other notes? And Callie, go ahead.
One more.
Yeah.
The next one, number 2, the new online way that we're going to be paying our bid in TOT. Well, it doesn't say in here. Will we be able to pay it every month? And if not, can we add that as a recommendation?
I don't have the answer to that. I see Adrian writing, so hopefully she will reach out to Cheyenne and find out what the potentials are there. I'm happy to have that conversation with Cheyenne too, Adrian.
Either way, Travis, I can email them too. She'll probably need to check with Shamice.
Right. So yeah, if you just want to take that one on, that'd be awesome.
The county would be heroes.
Question. So I guess this is up to the structure of the treasurer of how they do this online, and we're going to suggest if you can do it this way, please do it this way. And Callie, you're referring to kind of the same structure we have for paying our sales tax, 2 monthly prepayments, and then an end of quarter last payment filing. Is that kind of what you're asking them to go back to monthly?
Monthly.
I imagine they'll have strong opinions on that because if we can find out what their strong opinions are, then maybe we can make a recommendation to kind of accommodate that. Because if they are definitely against going back to monthly, then maybe a prepayment plan every month and then a quarter filing is a direction we could go. The same way we all pay our sales tax, right? Do we all pay our sales tax that same way? Okay.
I think so. Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
So.
I'm just curious, Callie, what is your interest in the monthly payments versus the monthly prepayment?
I just field that question / desire from colleagues pretty consistently.
Okay. Is it just cash holdings making it easier so you're not draining the accounts with 3 months worth of tax payments?
Correct.
Okay, cool.
John, question?
Yeah.
Yes. Actually, not really a question. I think Callie's suggestion should be probably a standalone recommendation. This recommendation to which she's referring, recommendation 2, was an effort to put data collection, I think, on the forms, whether they be physical or online. Am I right? So maybe we should have a separate recommendation, a brand new one for Callie for this upcoming year.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that that's how I interpret. Callie, are you interested in seeing this change be made in addition to the recommendations that's currently there to request ADR and occupancy statistics from the treasurer tax collector?
That does make the most sense. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcus. And we're jumping around a little bit here, but Callie, your notes are valuable. Do you have any more before we go back to?
I'm done.
Callie, just for clarification, that was TOT and bid?
Yes.
Monthly? Thank you. I'm just taking notes here so I can write this up. Okay.
Thank you. All right. So I also have some notes from reviewing the report that Travis sent, and they start at the top, they jump all over the place. I mean, I feel like we have some momentum right now in having a conversation about, possible bid ordinance change if we want to dive into that. Travis, what makes the most sense for your time right now as far as gathering direction from this board? Just going through notes on changes or actually having discussion on some other heavy items?
I think that discussion is better handled in on the heavier items, better handled in the meeting, and changes or recommendations to changes about the top portion of the report substance can be done either elsewhere.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So I think probably, I might ask Callie, are you interested in sort of just introducing some thoughts to this board about what a possible bid ordinance change could look like? And we can have that discussion as a group. Are you comfortable with that?
Sure.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay. Put the newbie on the spot, but okay. So I think everyone is aware that the supervisors are looking to eliminate or decrease the match that they give to MCTC. So there's been a lot of discussion that it's perhaps time for us to be self-feeders and be able to fund ourselves without the county's help or with minimal help. I should say that we really hope to continue the administration aspect with the county administrating the bid. We think that perception wise, and well, for many reasons, that it would be great for the county to continue that service for us. So looking to change the bid ordinance to increasing lodging to 2% and explore bringing in other industries at 1%, other tourism facing industries. So wineries have been discussed, activities have been discussed. Any other tourism related activities that we could think about?
Okay, great. Oh, sorry, go ahead, G2.
Oh, no, sorry. Like, are we ever thought about restaurants or bar and stuff to add into one of this thing, or?
The restaurants have become like a grenade. You mention that to either a lodging person or any other local, and they go back crazy. So I think.
Yeah, because that's something local people use it too. So yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's perceived as taxing local. I'm sorry, there's a dog fight.
Dog fight on camera. Well, thank you for introducing that. And I think it's, for context, I really enjoyed, and this is closer to the top of the report, but I think it's actually a helpful submission, Travis, that you added for the 2022 notes that actually outlines this conversation. And so if you don't mind, I'd like for us to just go and review that one passage as a group. And so what I did, just so everyone knows, I made a copy of the Google Doc and then I marked it up on my end. So my page numbers won't align with yours, unfortunately, kind of just like Callie's. But if we can all turn sort of the same section, it's going to be in the overview, section C. And if you go down year by year, you'll go to year 2022, which starts on, I believe, page 11. And maybe someone can confirm that for me. And Travis is muted.
With the new page numbering in the electronic document, it is page that starts at the bottom of page 8 and continues to page 9.
Oh, perfect. Okay. And Callie, so yeah, 8-ish pages in on the hard copy, there's a thing that says 2002 at the BOS hearing in May of 22. I don't know if everyone is on that, getting a nod. So let's just review that real quick. And if everyone has it in front of them, would we prefer to read it to ourselves or do a read aloud real quick? Does anyone have a preference? Marcus, are you reading it?
Maybe you could read it aloud for us, John, and we can follow along.
Okay. Yeah, Marcus already started. I saw his eyes moving reading it, but I'll go ahead and just read it real quick. 2022, at the Board of Supervisors hearing in May of 22, members of the Board of Supervisors brought forward concerns with the amount of matching funds being contributed on behalf of incorporated areas in Mendocino County. Due to the fact that the incorporated areas of the county maintain the collected TOT funds, the county sees no direct return on the matching dollar that it contributes on behalf of the incorporated areas. The Board of Supervisors directed county staff to form an ad hoc committee to investigate options for and potentially reducing the amount of financial support from the county of Mendocino to MCTC. In June of 22, by a 3-2 vote, the Board of Supervisors approved the annual contract once again. Following the approval of the 2023 contract, the MCTC Board of Directors instructed Travis to begin conversations with Civitas to research and understand alternate funding options to keep the organization revenue at its current level. So the MCTC Board of Directors approved a retainer agreement with Civitas to research the potential of increasing the bid assessment on lodging businesses, which is where the 2% conversation is coming in, and the potential of assessing other tourism-facing business sectors. Travis and Civitas project manager Emily Brown, whom I see is on the call, worked with county staff to request sales tax data for lodging properties, restaurants, wine tasting room, direct sales, brewery district sales, and attractions. However, an official request to the Board of Supervisors was required for Civitas to access the requested data, and this request of the Board of Supervisors was not given priority, and finally an appointment on the Board of Supervisors calendar was ultimately granted in November. So this was like 2 months ago. The resolution and NDA agreement between the county and Civitas was granted by a 3-2 vote. And in December, like last month, Travis was invited to a meeting with Planning and Building Services and County Council, where Travis was made aware that the county was not comfortable with the resolution for the NDA, contracting with Civitas, and the use of funding by MCTC to contract with Civitas. So I had a follow-up question there, but we can go over that later. Therefore, putting the research and future funding for the organization in great jeopardy. During meetings with the county's ad hoc committee, it was made clear that an ROA study be conducted. In August of 22, the board of directors of MCTC directed Travis to engage with Carl's group, Travel Analytics Group, to conduct the MCTC influence and website ROI study. The preliminary results of the study were delivered to the MCTC board at its annual meeting in January, which was this month, which many of us attended. This study shows that MCTC's ROI is $62 for every $1 invested in its marketing programs. The organization continued its brand awareness marketing initiatives, launched TV and radio commercials, launched video podcast series, relaunched its annual shoulder season festivals, and moved forward with rebranding and build out of a new website set to launch this spring. Organization, at the request of supervisors, to engage in a 3-county Leave No Trace campaign, researched and developed and incorporated cannabis business into our marketing assets. So this is, I think, a really great recap with context of why a bid ordinance change may be prudent. And just having gone through that whole thing, I guess I'd turn it over to the board for questions and discussion. And I think the big question is, do we focus on a recommendation to MCTC to consider a bid increase of 1% or assessing other tourism facing business sectors? And if so, which of those sectors would we recommend be assessed? And I see Callie with her hand raised. Go ahead, Callie. And I'm sorry, Callie, you muted.
A question to your question, I guess, that's just the process. Would MCTC be the appropriate body to pursue the change in bid, or would stakeholders be, were the bid oversight, or is this board the more appropriate one, or some other group?
Yeah, I don't really understand your question. I guess what would
you were saying, do we want to make the recommendation to MCTC? And my question is MCTC the appropriate body to move forward with a bid change?
Well, I guess the answer would be no. They wouldn't have jurisdiction on enacting the change, but what is our role as a bid advisory board, I guess? And I'm not, it's not rhetorical, I'm asking. Me
too.
Yeah, and go ahead, Travis, if you're anything.
I think this might be a question suited for Emily with her vast knowledge and experience in creating these ordinances, how other jurisdictions come forward with these processes.
Excellent. Thank you, Travis. And the chair recognizes Emily Brown. Emily, thank you for joining us. Could you possibly just introduce yourself and let us know why you're here?
Of course, yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Brown. I'm project manager with Civitas. I've been working with Travis the past few months, as it was mentioned in the report. And I'd be happy to answer that question. It's not always, one size fits all. We've seen jurisdictions, we've seen stakeholders grouped together. It could be a combination of those. If we're talking about converting to the 94 district, it is going to require, stakeholder support in over 50% weighted in assessment. So of course they play a large role in that. But usually what we do is get a steering committee together, and it's made up of people from the jurisdictions, lodging business representatives. If we're looking at adding the different attractions or wineries, we'd have representatives from that group also. And then that group would sort of spearhead the effort. And yeah, I hope that answers your question. Is there anything I can clarify on?
Great. No, thank you. So it sounds like the work to process a change in the bid ordinance or a change in how assessments are collected, or not necessarily collected, but the structure, to change the structure of the assessments would be initiated by a steering committee?
Basically, yeah. And so it would just, I think we'd work closely with MCTC. Travis, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But eventually, you know, it would be having the owners association, and we would decide who would make up that owners association. If we're creating a subcommittee from MCTC, we have a few options there.
Okay. So I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to the legal pathway for how this stuff actually comes to fruition. And so as I understand it now, and Callie, you know, you've done a great job in helping me understand a lot of it too, but the way that the current 1% on lodging assessment actually became, you know, part of how we market the county was organized by lodging operators. I mean, how does that become an actual and legal and binding situation? And then where do we get from where we are now to where we want to go legally as well? And I guess that question was sort of just sent out there, but maybe Emily, do you know the answer to that? Is it again just starting the process of authorizing a steering committee?
No, so there's no formal process to initiate the steering committee. It's just gathering that group of supporters and the group that's interested in moving this initiative forward. The current district was established under the 1989 law, which is a little different than the 1994 law. And the 89 law that establishes bids or business improvement districts, it's annual renewal, as you guys are aware, at the Board of Supervisors. It's just formed in the absence of majority protest. But for forming the 94 district, you have to have majority support in the form of 50% or more weighted in how much they're paying in assessment. So for everyone within the district proposed to be assessed. And so the first steps would just be forming that steering committee. It's not an official or formal process or anything like that. It's just kind of getting that momentum. And then the steering committee would determine the parameters of the district, which I'm sure would be very similar to the 89 district that you guys have in place already. So the boundaries would all be the same. We would talk about the assessment rate, who would be assessed, are we increasing from 1% to 2%? And a lot of that would be based on feedback that we'd receive. A big part of this process is outreach and speaking with the business communities and finding out what they are in support of. And then we would draft what's called a management district plan. And that is sort of the governing document of the 94 district. And so we go out and we collect petitions from the business owners that are supportive of this initiative. And then once we have over 50%, again, weighted by assessment, we take that to the Board of Supervisors, and that initiates a 3-step hearing process. And so we go through that process. We notice all of the businesses proposed to be assessed, and then there's a final hearing where the Board of Supervisors ultimately gives their final vote of approval.
Okay. Thank you very much for that explanation. And if I'm hearing correctly, that this new proposed assessment structure isn't really an add-on to the existing, it would sort of take over and just become a new structure, and the other one would expire without being renewed.
Exactly. We actually have a few options there. We could just, of course, the 89 district would be renewed in, I think it's June or July. And so there's no set timeline. We could renew that and then concurrently work on forming the 94 district. And then once that's established, we can just disestablish the 89 district. Or if you want, if it is, if it works on that timeline, you could just let it expire, so that there's two options there.
Thank you. And go ahead, Marcus. And you are muted.
Just some clarification needed from me. We're talking about this change in the bid ordinance, and I think we've tossed around multiple things. One would be a percentage change of the amount collected, an increase of 1%. Another would be potentially assessing other businesses, tourist-based businesses. And then the third, changing from the 89 law to the 94 law. Which of these, are all of these being explored? Have any of these been decided by the MCTC board of which direction is best to move forward in? Because I'm not too familiar with the differences between the 89 law and the 94 law, and to make decisions based on that, I would need some type of report out of an evaluation of those differences and the benefits, and any recommendations from boards or groups that have researched this. What bid changes are we specifically talking about here, I guess is my question. When we talk about
good question, Marcus. And Travis has his hand raised. Emily, if that's all right with you.
Of course.
Yeah, so the MCTC board has discussed this at length. And I think that, and Callie, first bless you, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think or John, I think we left the last conversation with the board of directors as waiting for input from this group on direction.
No, I think you're right, Travis. And I guess that was my understanding coming in, was that our board, the advisory board, would first need to make a recommendation before the MCTC board would pursue a direction, which is why originally I thought that's what we needed to do, was to make a recommendation to increase an assessment to the MCTC board. But I guess we have to decide what our recommendation on face value we want to be first, and then we can decide how or who it gets recommended to. But that's my understanding, Marcus, is basically we have to decide as a board what we feel is best for MCTC moving forward to continue its momentum as a wonderful marketer of our county. And Callie has her hand up as well.
Do we need to wait for the sales tax data to come in before we can really make an educated recommendation?
Travis was going to respond.
Well, I think there are two ways of thinking about it. I think that if we come up with a proposed direction that we're working towards, it obviously gives Emily and I clarity when we go to the next hearing for the sales tax data and NDA, which I think is helpful for us to be able to have a little more direction to keep the supervisors moving forward at a quicker pace than the last meeting that we attended, when it was very open-ended, our request. I also think that it's important for the steering committee to be able to have a plan or a suggested direction, with the caveat that we don't have the data. We're waiting for that, but this is what we believe at this point in time is the correct direction. And begin to start talking to partners and stakeholders, and having the conversations that need to be had.
Go ahead, Calvin.
So would the recommendation be to form a steering committee? So it increases.
I don't really have the answer. I guess, was that a question for Travis?
Or Emily, or the board? I don't know.
Sorry, go ahead, Marcus.
I was a little confused regarding the sales tax conversation. I presume that's relevant to whether other businesses get assessed. Is that correct? Okay. So it sounds like I would suggest that maybe the steering committee be formed out of potentially the current MCLA structure or group that exists. Maybe I would suggest we start there. We start with the lodging owners and say, hey, this is what we want to do. Do we have your support? And we need to form a group to spearhead this. And then I guess my next question is, how is this funded for any expenses? I imagine there's legal expenses. Who funds that? If we get a steering committee to move forward on pursuing a change in the bid ordinance.
Great question.
Emily? Who in other industries, who funds, in other destinations that have done this, who funds these efforts to change the bid ordinance? Because I imagine there's legal fees.
Yeah, I mean, it's most often the DMO or CVB or the existing district. And we write into the plan, if we were to go the 94 route, we write into the management district plan, a small portion of the budget is a contingency or reserve fund. And those funds can be used once collected to sort of pay back the DMO or the CVB for the costs of forming the district. And
there's three different potential changes we're looking at. I'm just curious that if we were to present them all as a recommendation and this change were to be attempted, I presume, let's say we decided to recommend all three of those changes, to change the bid amount, to increase the 1%, to change to the 94 law, and to change to assess tourist-based businesses like wineries. How does that play out in terms of it getting protested or approved? Because now we're talking about wineries being assessed. So I imagine they have some sort of weight of voting. And then for the lodging, you said 50% is needed for the lodging. Is that based on bid collected weight of dollar amount?
So the 50% would be based on everyone proposed to be in the district. And I'm talking only about forming the 94 district. So if we get the steering committee together, we do our outreach, we draft the management district plan, and we've decided, there is support for having lodging businesses, wineries, and attractions. So we get the historical data on the lodging businesses by looking at TOT information, and then we sort of reverse calculate the revenue, and then we estimate what their assessment would be, and then we use the sales tax data for the attractions and the wineries to do the same thing. So we estimate everyone's assessment, and then that estimated assessment amount determines their vote. So if we think they're going to pay 10% of the assessment, their vote will be 10% of the petition. So
thank you. Sorry, I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself with all these details, but I just want to say as a member of this board, I'm comfortable discussing and voting on the possibility of changing the bid to increase by 1%. I'm open to discussing trying to get assessments on other tourist-based businesses besides lodging. What I'm not yet comfortable discussing is the switching to the 94 law, because I just don't have enough information regarding the difference. And I think if this board wants to pursue that, we need to have some type of I guess, lecture on the difference of the two laws. That's how I feel.
I'm happy to give just a brief explanation of it right now if you guys want, or if you think that's better suited for another time. I'll kind of defer to you on what you think is best.
Thanks, Emily, and great points, Marcus. And Travis, kind of loop you in here. I think as we were leaving the annual meeting, most of the conversation surrounded the first 2 points that Marcus mentioned: consideration on existing bid increase for lodging, possibly bringing in other tourism-facing businesses, but maintaining the 89 law just because the structure was a little bit more conducive to getting the first two interests passed. Do you feel like that's correct? Maybe that question's for Travis and Emily.
I'm of really mixed opinion. However, when going for the ordinance change with the 94 law, it is nice to be able to go out and get the petitions and know where we stand during the process, rather than waiting for the no vote period.
And G2, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of based on so far, so just first-hand information. I'm a little bit scared to give up what we had for last. It took so many years, so many going through so much big process to set this up, lodging bid. So I will not be comfortable giving up that before we know exactly where we stand with the other 93 or 4, that whatever the number that you guys are referring. I'll say I want to make sure that whatever happens, we maintain this one, renew it simultaneously while we're working on the other one, but not mess up what is going on, because it took so many years to set this up. Once we goes away, it's hard to bring it back.
Thank you very much. And Marcus had his hand up in G2. It sounds like there's some feedback on your end. If you don't mind, go back on mute for now.
Is it possible that we can discuss this more in detail maybe in our next meeting? The switch of the difference between the two laws, the 89 and the 94. And is there a document that bullet points all the differences that we can, a summary that we can reference? So when we come to discuss it in the next meeting, we have a better understanding of whether we want to add this change as a recommendation in our bid report. Is that possible?
Of course, yeah. I can send over some documents for you guys, and I'd be happy to go into more detail on that at the next meeting.
Go ahead, Callie. Okay.
Quick question for Emily. Is there a time frame to collect the positive petitions?
No, the law doesn't have any set time frame. From a fiscal standpoint, you want to try to do it on as quick of a timeline as possible while still reaching out to as many people as you can for the legal costs.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to ask this, Marcus, but I had a brief technical glitch and I missed what you asked. So I didn't really understand Callie's point.
I just asked if we could continue to discuss the subject of changing from the 89 law to the 94 law in a future meeting and get some summarized information about the differences between the two laws that we can look at and evaluate, so we have better knowledge before we move towards a decision. But I do want to say I am still comfortable with talking about the bid increase to 1% in this week, and whether that should be a recommendation, and then also discussing separately whether to recommend pursuing other tourist business getting assessed as well.
Awesome. Thanks for recapping. And Callie, go ahead.
All right, well, I'm going to try to leave Emily alone. As Travis mentioned, there's so many new corporations that are now owners, at least on the coast. And for management companies, who gets to sign the petition in that case?
So it's the owner or any owner representative that has authorization to sign. And most of the time they know. A majority of the time it's the general manager. But if you go in and ask the general manager, they'll be able to tell you if they have authority to sign, or if they'll know who does have authority.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I guess my question, and anyone here, please feel free to respond, is what would be the most appropriate recommendation be from this board to officially pursue something like this? And Travis, with your hand raised, thank you.
I just want to say that from the perspective of the report and giving us as much room as we can to move within the report with regard to the county, I would suggest that you make the recommendation as large and broad as possible.
Okay. Thank you. You too.
Yeah, I think we can maybe put a motion that we should explore more further, and like the way Travis said, like leave a bread open, that we can explore more choices how we can self-sufficient, increase the bid, and be yeah, I think that's the way you're thinking in Travis.
Yeah, I think that we need to make a fully developed recommendation with our entire plan for whether that be increase and conversion, multiple, and inclusion of other businesses. I think that we need to have all of the potentials addressed in the report so that we are covering everything that we need to within the county, within what's required, especially if there are going to be funds expended on this project.
So a broad recommendation. Oh, sorry, G2, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just saying. So are we the place to put the motion right now, or still ways to discuss?
Yeah, I think we probably are still in the discussion process. But to summarize the motion, I don't think would be counterproductive, G2, if you have some thoughts in head.
No, go ahead, then I'll wait. I know that way we don't waste time on the amending the motion and stuff. Go ahead.
Okay, no problem. And we'll jump to Marcus and then go back to Travis.
I was going to say that I just think my feeling is that we would create separate recommendations for all these different topics rather than one bundled up together, and then discuss them individually. Like I would like to take some time in this meeting to discuss a recommendation that I guess I would propose to discuss of a recommendation to increase the bid assessment from 1% to 2%, and then discuss that recommendation specifically with these board members, and then separately a recommendation to pursue assessing other tourist-based business like wineries, and then have a discussion about that recommendation with this board, and so forth.
Can I get Adrian's feedback on just how that, a point of order wise, how that works for the report? Is that the best way to accomplish this, Adrian? Or do you think it's one recommendation with the bullet points of each? What are your thoughts?
If I may, through the chair, I believe either would be appropriate for the board. I think if you single it out more like Marcus has specified, it may be easier for them to digest as singular recommendations. Because there's so much detail, I think if you lump it into one, they may miss aspects of what's in there. But I don't think it's wrong if you wanted to do one. It just may be clear to make them individual requests.
Great, thank you. That's what I was looking for.
Can I go ahead and suggest a recommendation for this upcoming bid report?
Yes, please do.
That be added to the report so we can develop it and discuss it and decide whether we want to include it or not. And that would be to recommend a change the bid ordinance from 1% to 2%. And then I guess who we're recommending that to, though, because it's kind of an effort by the lodging owners, really. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that shouldn't live in this report. I mean, this report is for recommendations to the county and to MCTC. This topic is foremost most important to me right now because of what the Board of Supervisors have done in terms of wanting to reduce the match or remove it completely. And I feel like our DMO needs to get solidified, solidified funding that's at a good amount that they can operate at, and increasing the bid from 1% to 2% can provide that. And I know this is a hot topic. I wasn't in support of it a year ago, but I do feel, given the state of the county's finances, at some point, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, that they might pursue changing the TOT from 10% to 11%. And I feel like if that happened, and then we tried to move the bid from 1% to 2%, it would be far more difficult. Is that, that's just a guess. That's a presumption that could happen by the county, changing the TOT from 10% to 11. I imagine Adrian can probably advise on whether that's a realistic possibility that could happen down the line or not.
If I may respond for you, Marcus, I believe it's a realistic possibility. I have heard rumor of that being increased in the next election series by June to November.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's vital that that we make this move ASAP, because the voters might not support both changes. And I'd rather have funds that are assessed with oversight by lodging owners and stakeholders than the general fund with the oversight by the county.
Yeah, and I think that's, a responsible submission from someone who's appointed to represent the interests of, the tourism community market. So it completely makes sense. And Cindy, go ahead with your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you, John. Just a question for Travis. I'm just, in thinking about the timing aspect of all of this, what is the likelihood, do you think, of having the county continue to match the bid with the 50% for the upcoming year? I think I heard mention that there was a possibility that they would continue this next year. What do you feel like is the likelihood of that? Like, how much time do we really have to discuss this?
I really think we are against a wall, and we need to strongly suggest and get as much support that we can for the supervisors to continue to fund us at the 50% match for one more year while we move forward with this process where we can become self-sufficient. And I think that there's definitely support for that. I also think that, given the roadblocks that we've come up against with getting information and getting on the supervisor's schedule, it's a valid argument. We're really trying our hardest and to move this forward as quickly as possible to relieve them. However, we need support for one more year, and I think that we really need to go for that.
And you feel like they would be more favorable to doing that if they saw that we were taking actions to becoming more self-reliant?
Yeah, I think that if we come forward with a fully thought out and developed plan, that we have far better chances of gaining their support for another year. And that's my thought.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, go ahead, Marcus.
That's great to hear you say that, Travis, that we're making efforts to encourage the soups to keep the 50% match, I presume all around, unincorporated and incorporated. Yet the MCTC board chose a budget that didn't budget for any income from the county.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Well,
and I know it's an effort to be conservative, but my I guess concern here is that. Go ahead.
I have a round 2 budget going before the finance committee in February that includes county funding. I think it's really important that we get the time to follow through with this process with their support financially.
Great, I agree. I think that's a good move. I was afraid that them seeing that we budgeted without their match would make them go, oh, they don't need our funds, so let's eliminate it. So I'm glad to hear that you're redoing the budget to include that. And I guess we'll see that budget in this report at some point soon. Or which meeting do you think we'll see that?
Once that budget goes before the finance committee and then the board of directors, I can bring it forward to this committee.
Great.
Okay, great discussion. Marcus, you considered voicing a recommendation to be, actually put in the report. Do you still have those thoughts in mind, or do we want to recap on a couple things? Or?
Well, I guess it's the question of whether that recommendation should come from, I guess it should come from this board, but actionable by who? A recommendation to the county lodging orders and to the MCLA, I suppose, if we can do that in this report, to form a steering committee of stakeholders and lodging owners that will be affected by the assessment to pursue an increase in the assessment by 1%.
Okay, great. And Travis.
Yeah, I think I just thought of a solution, and that would be offering up MCTC or the executive director of MCTC to kind of be the facilitator, so to speak, of gathering the stakeholders for this committee and organizing. So therefore you could make it actionable in that way in the report under the MCTC heading.
Yeah, I think that's a smart path forward. I'm going to make a suggestion mostly to you, Travis, and of course for this board's consideration, but obviously this whole conversation is about a topic that probably keeps you up at night, Travis, because there's a lot surrounding it that affects not only your role and the way that you can become effective from a DMO's perspective, but also it affects us as stakeholders in the lodging industry and tourism facing businesses. So anyway, what I'm saying is you've given this a ton of thought, and you've also maybe been batting back and forth best ways for the board or for even the MCTC board to offer you a chance to make that change, or to at least be the best version of yourself in a way. I mean, if I were to ask you, could you write proposed recommendations that would be ideal for you to operate the way you envision would be the most effective? I mean, could you come up with those 1, 2, 3, or 4 recommendations that this board could review?
I see where this is going.
Yes.
You put that so well and democratically. Yes, absolutely. I would be happy to take a stab at crafting 3 to 4 recommendations in order that are, sequential, so to speak, of how and what would be needed to make this move forward. If that is what this group decides they want to ask me to do. I just don't want to step out of bounds and be, putting recommendations forward and, so to speak, putting things in your mouth.
And I appreciate that. And Marcus, I'll finish my thought here and then I'll pass it over to you. But and I know that, Travis. And so, one of my observations as tourism professional over the years you've been the director is that you don't overstep those bounds without requiring direction from those who are authorized to give it to you. And so with, again, being a witness to the success of our DMO, I also see how confined you are by that same process. And it frustrates me from an outsider's perspective, while I wonder, what could VMC do if it really had an opportunity to enact its own vision with the advisory guidance of professionals like ourselves versus the other way around, which is, there's tons of committees who are trying to create a horse that turned out to be a camel, that whole saying. And so I think we have, we've seen a lot of good, and I would love to continue that trajectory. And I just think that you'd probably be the best person to tell us what makes most sense from this perspective. But we still have that full opportunity to review and discuss and decide whether or not they're appropriate. And so I'm not by any means saying write what you want and we'll put a stamp on it. But I really do feel like your suggestions would carry a ton of weight. And Marcus first, and then back to Cindy.
I just wanted to reiterate what you just said, John. Yeah, I'm in support of Travis creating some recommendations because he, in the spirit of what we've discussed here, he understands it. And like you said, we're going to have plenty of time to look over it and make it our own, and make it sure that it's 100% a voice of all of us of what these recommendations are. And they are the recommendations, I imagine, of this potential bid ordinance change. But also, Travis, can you make sure to include a recommendation? I would like to just from the previous year, the and/or option, to eliminate the and/or option and just create one recommendation when all of this bid ordinance changes to change the definition of at-large to include general manager.
Absolutely.
So.
Thanks, Marcus. And Cindy, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to just throw my voice in to agree with what's currently being discussed. I feel like, I really would love to make more of a positive representation from a place of confident education in these terms. And I feel like Travis's breadth of understanding and experience is really gonna be essential for that. But I also like to say that I feel like, Travis, you've been pretty loyal with our MCLA meetings for coming up. I would think we're coming up on 3 years this March, and I feel like you've gained some respect as well as some your perspective as well as the way you've represented MCTC. And I from some of the conversations we've been having with our MCLA group, there's some hesitancy and there's some misunderstanding, and there's a need for us to positively represent this in that group. And I think you would do that really well, Travis. I think you've earned that. People have seen, the way that you've presented yourself. And yeah, so just adding my comments to John's and to Marcus's, that I would love to see you put forward some recommendations, and then maybe at a future meeting we could talk about how we're going to present this in a positive framework for the lodging holders. Kind of maybe some different ways we can do a presentation to give some opportunity for people to ask questions and to clear up some misunderstandings. And I know we're only meeting once a month now, and I think once when we brought this up, it took up the entire meeting, but or maybe we need a different venue for it with the same stakeholders. But
Thanks very much, Sydney. Go ahead, Travis.
I was just going to say thank you all for your support. I certainly will sit down and craft what I think are the appropriate recommendations for the process.
Don't hold back. And Marcus's recommendation of refining the language from previous year's recommendation makes sense to me, and probably Cindy and Callie and G2, just because this is your first term for this fiscal year on this board. If you have questions or want me or anyone to reiterate that Marcus's suggestion, let me know. Or if you understand it, then great. But I agree with you as well, Marcus. So, yeah, it sounds like we have some direction and we have more content to review before our next meeting. And I'm excited to review that content as it comes in. Travis, do you have any questions for this board about what your task is, or any ways we can help communicate what it is that we're excited about seeing?
I think that, if there are any points, about the change, the potentials that we've already discussed, please share those in this meeting. I'll take notes on that. and I will get moving on crafting the recommendations and share those in the Google Doc so that they can be looked at by everybody and not be, discussed, so to speak.
Yeah, perfect. Go ahead, Mark.
And we'll try to find out maybe before the next meeting whether the treasurer realistically can collect month to month or quarterly, so we can make recommendations accordingly. And then also, I imagine we're going to get some summarized type of report of the differences between the 89 law and the 94 law before the next meeting. Awesome.
Yeah, and I can share that out with the group on a BCC so that everybody gets it, or I can share it with Adrian and she can share it with the group with the next agenda, however you guys prefer, or Adrian prefers is fine with me. But I'm happy to help.
Fine, Travis.
Okay, great.
I will post it though for the next agenda and make it probably 4A for us or 4B so we have it discussed and agendized.
Wow, I actually thought this was going to be just a business as usual year, but it sounds like we have a lot to discuss.
I wish it were a business as usual year.
Well, this is a good board to meet that challenge head on. So Cindy, go ahead with your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to say that if we could have the documentation a little bit before the next board meeting, just to have some time to review it ahead of time, that would help me. Rather than just being presented in the agenda.
Yeah, I'll send it out to the group, like I said, under a BCC ahead of far in advance. I have that piece of paper that Emily's referencing, and so I can get that out to everybody as early as today. But Adrian will agendize it as a piece of the next meeting.
Perfect.
And Marcus.
Travis, I presume the MCTC board has gone through a full evaluation of the difference of the two laws and has come to a strong stance and a position as to what, or no, has there been like a deep study by the MCTC board into this?
Callie, go ahead.
Well, first we had to get past restaurants. So, no. Short answer is no.
It's my feeling that and this is just a feeling, that the MCTC board will head in the recommended direction by this group and the recommendation, that I bring forward and fully support.
That's helpful info. Thank you. Do we want to, is there any other notes from this board? Yeah, oh, absolutely, Marcus. Please
I'm sorry. I just had something pop into my head regarding the recommendation about the large lodging seat and its current vacancy, and it's a logistical question. If the large lodging seat is empty right now, right?
Yes, and I know what you're going to ask.
Well, I'm just wondering, is the county going to present another potential election in the election time this year, or are they going to wait till the next term election, 2 years from now, to try to fill that seat?
There's an election held every year, especially with vacancies. However, I am going to go forward and ask the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector if there's a potential of moving our annual election from the fall to the spring, in which case, if that is an option, we could potentially, if they're willing to do it, have an election this spring and fill those two seats. That also falls in line with the bylaws, which require our annual meeting to be done within 1 month of the beginning of our annual contract with the County of Mendocino. And so if we got those folks seated in the summer, we could have our annual meeting and training at the beginning of the fiscal year, which would be July or August, rather than in the winter.
One more last question. So when there's a vacant seat in the elected seats on the MCTC board, the county, if it's vacant, the county will include it in the next year's election by default, or we have to tell them to do that?
No, it's by default.
Okay, it is by default. Okay, good. So there'll be 4 seats being voted on in this next round. The 3
No.
that typically turn over, and then the added one.
There will be 3 because we have members on the board who took positions midterm. So when midterm delegates come up, or somebody resigns and somebody takes over midterm, gets elected, finishes that term. So anyways, yes, there will be an annual election.
Go ahead, G2.
One question. Do we have any bylaw like provision that, let's say we have election, nobody, somehow that seat is empty. Meanwhile, like we wait for whole 1 year or next election term, there's a way we can appoint someone as a board can appoint someone. I know I saw one few other boards, they have that provision that election happens somehow that, or somebody resign in between or something happens. So they, in between they're waiting, they have provision to appoint somebody just for 1 year term, and you can have non-voting member or something, but at least you can bring somebody into the board that potentially will be ready for next year to run election.
If I may, John, there is.
Oh yes, of course.
There is no provision, G2, for appointing an elected position. However, if a lodging seat was not filled, the previous director, seat holder, could stay until the seat was filled by election. Now, those 2 seat holders were not willing to stay until elected.
What we have to do to make that provision? Do we have to change the bylaws or stuff, or what is the?
That's in the ordinance.
Okay.
And so that would come as an ordinance. We could change that when we build the new ordinance.
Okay. Yeah. Just something to think here.
Good note, G2. Go ahead, Marcus.
I was to say, but hopefully if we do change the definition to include general managers, we won't face this problem. But I wanted to ask Travis, do you have access to a list of who the large lodging owners are? Because I'd love to approach a couple people I think might be large lodging to encourage them, but I don't know for sure if they're large lodging. Where do I find this out?
So you can ask me specifically if somebody fits into a category, and I can tell you yes or no.
Okay.
I do get a list from the assistant treasurer tax collector, quarterly, or upon request if I need it. So I can get an updated list. Well, actually, I have last fiscal year's list. So, yeah, just ask me who they are and I can let you know.
And anybody on the fringes, I presume, if they're in large and they start the process and then they drop to medium, they're still allowed to
they hold the seat for the duration of the term.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll give you a call. I want to call Travis.
So I had one note to ask you, Travis, about your 2022 update in the historical overview portion of the report. And I just wanted some clarification because as you're writing recommendations, I think this board, I think it'll be important information for this board to have within context, where basically you're saying that, where did I write this? Planning and Building Services and County Council were not comfortable with the resolution for NDA contracting with Civitas and use of funding by MCTC to contract with Civitas advisors. So my interpretation of that is we're waiting on sales tax data to learn what contribution the future or for the other tourism facing businesses could contribute. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oops,
sorry. Point of clarification, and I can clarify that in the document as well. it was county council's uncomfort with the bid report not having this contained as a recommendation, as well as the resolution that was approved in November. So the resolution will have to go back before the Board of Supervisors. Will have to make the official request again. And then for the sales tax data for the other tourism facing business sectors.
Okay, and
I hope I made that clear. Sorry.
well, I think so. And so I guess because we were, talking a little bit about, well, should we wait to recommend including those tourism facing businesses until we know what their contributions could be based on the tax data? But is the Board of Supervisors not willing to release that information to Civitas until the next meeting? I mean, are we sort of behind the eight ball here with timing and nodding? Yeah. So, I mean, it may, I guess as you're writing recommendations, if they come back, I want to make sure that this group is aware of that context, because we could be waiting on information that is not going to be available to us until it's too late. And that is frustrating, of course, in its own way. But that just stood out to me, and I just was hoping that we could all, go ahead, Travis.
Maybe Adrienne could give us if she has it, some insight as to when that is potentially going to be scheduled before the Board of Supervisors.
I will tell you as much as I know. So I emailed Emily last week because we were talking about it, and County Council is reviewing with our Chief County Council his discomfort with funding sources not being mentioned in there, as well as potential contracting. The county, moving forward with this, would prefer to have the contract with Civitas versus VMC. So there's a couple different layers through the whole county council review process, but the short answer is, prior to release of the data, the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector will need to be comfortable to sign the NDA. She currently is not comfortable signing the NDA, so the NDA is not signed. Then the resolution will need to go to the board for approval, when the auditor will bless it along with county council. And at this point, that would not be before March at the earliest. And I don't know if that's likely either, given how busy the tax collector's office has been. So I don't have a great time frame on that, but there's more than one issue holding the resolution.
Thanks, Adrienne. And if not March, is there a backup date that could be behind it, like April or May, or?
It's all based on when it would be signed, as well as presented. So I don't really have a backup date. What I would say is, worst case scenario, upon approval of the next fiscal year's report on July 1, if the funding question becomes a major issue.
Okay. So that's what I'm thinking, is because there are so many questions or items up in the air surrounding whether this data will become available and information to this board, like we may not have that information by the time it's time to finalize our report. So I just think we need to be prepared to accept that some of that data is not within our reach. So I know that was a part of the conversation at the MCTC board meeting, and some of that is unfortunate, but that's how it goes. Go ahead, Mark.
We could still recommend exploring it as a possible additional source of revenue for our destination marketing organization. And oh God, what else was I going to say? My brain's starting to wear. My understanding is too that these change in, with the exception of obviously changing from the 89 law to 94 law, that these changes to the ordinance can happen mid-year. They don't have to happen before the approval of the upcoming year to be approved in the upcoming year's law. Does that make sense? My question.
I think I know what you're asking, and it's more of a county question. If you want me to respond.
Oh, please.
Whoever might.
Yeah. So the definition is an ordinance amendment, which on the downside requires county council approval for me to bring forward a red line ordinance to the board. And then that will change the bid chapter inside county code. That can happen at any time that there's support by county council to get an ordinance amendment through the board.
Go ahead, Emily.
Adrian, can I just ask, do you think the tax collector's office would be okay with just giving us an aggregate number for the wineries and attractions, rather than the individual data? I know they have some hangups about, releasing the individual, but at least with the aggregate, we could get an idea of the impact.
Right. I'm not positive on the response. It would be worth asking. And then if you like, you could always email me and I can forward it and then copy you on their message so you have the correct emails.
Perfect, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Marcus.
I was just, would this data also be available on state level, Secretary of State's office? Sales tax revenue based on location? They probably wouldn't break it down to the individual businesses though, right? So anyway.
Travis just stepped to use the restroom, Marcus. Give him a minute.
What's that?
Oh, thanks for Travis went to the restroom real quick.
Oh, yeah, no, I just throwing that out there as a possible avenue of pursuing this data. I imagine the Secretary of State office, or not, I'm sorry, the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration might, I don't know whether this is public record or not, the sales tax collected or the amounts broken down by region or county or even business. Probably a long shot. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know normally we go directly to the jurisdictions and they have to give permission to access it. So, but that's something we could look into for sure.
Thanks, Emily. I mean, that aggregate data, thanks for being creative to try and find that info, because really that will answer our question. How much additional funding will the organization have, and the aggregate data is going to answer that pretty well. So that would be super cool if that data could be made available. So, and we could have a more informed decision as a board while we approve a recommendation if it's written that way. So thank you.
Definitely, I'll look into that.
Is this board comfortable moving along the agenda to item number 5? Or is there still more to discuss within item 4? And hearing none, I know we started on 4A, but 4B was also looped in there. So just for the record, a discussion of the previous bid advisory board recommendations will give the board an opportunity to comment there before moving on. And hearing none, we'll move to item number 5, communications received and filed. Anyone?
No communications received through the county.
Okay, thanks, Adrian.
Sure.
Item number 6, matters from the public.
I don't see anyone else that wishes to speak. If you can raise your hand. We did have 2 earlier. They've since dropped out of the waiting room. I think it's just us. No hands are up. You're clear.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And item number 7, matters from the advisory board. Would anyone care to speak on a matter from the advisory board?
I don't have anything.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you all. Hearing none, Marcus's lips are sealed. And with that, we can move towards item 8, adjournment. And I think we need someone to make a motion to adjourn. Is that right?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thanks, G2.
I can second it.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? All right. We will adjourn at 2:39 p.m. Just a reminder, your next meeting is February 23rd. I'll have the agenda up and posted at least the week before, if not 10 days prior.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And unofficially, now that we're adjourned, I guess I'm sorry. I wanted to say thanks to Emily Brown for being here and offering all of that information for us today. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank
Thanks,
you, everyone.
everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
See you next time.